people are just feeling so much anxiety right now, and I cannot tell you how valuable those emails can be, along with an automation campaign helping you as well along the way.
Welcome to a new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Vinny, and we're really glad to have all of you join us today. On this show, we talk to CX and technology experts from around the world. We explore, uncover, and share fresh insights on creating experiences that your customers will remember and look forward to. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 44,000 solutions created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc. magazine, Tech World, CIO, and many others. Engati recently also won the Cody 2021 award for Best AI-driven technology solution. We run the Engati blog, Twitter channel, and Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest, Marji J. Sherman is a world-renowned social and digital media marketer, frequently appearing on lists of the top marketers, social media marketers, and digital media marketers in the world. Her depth of knowledge about digital marketing, SEO, and social media is exceptional, and she's provided significant value to many businesses. She believes that a solid foundation is a well crafted brand pillar, engaging, and a steadfast awareness of customer engagement and advocacy. That is the key to any social media strategy for brands, no matter how big or well known they are. Welcome to the show, Marji. We are glad to have you with us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Before we dive into our interview with Marji, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders across the globe. So, getting back to the interview, the first question that I would want to ask you is, what's the best email marketing campaign that you've created?
That's hard to answer.
Yeah.
I think probably my favorite that had the best results was for a financial institution that dealt with lending, retirement, financial advisors, as well as insurance. And while working there, obviously, those are not very exciting topics. And so having to figure out how do we get somebody to open an email about this type of content when it's not flashy and exciting and we're not giving 50% off of anything. And what we figured out is that with insurance specifically, that it's something that people have because they're thinking about their future. And so with the email campaign, it was very important to tap into having a better future, having a solid future, being financially solvent in the future. And retirement and lending can also play into that same theme as well. And so with our email campaign, it was about thinking, how do we create a subject line that will relate to the person that's opening it and be very personable versus what is a subject line that would also hit with a businessman who maybe doesn't want that personal touch, but they're looking kind of for how to keep track of their business and their insurance needs. So in going through that, we had 2 to 3 different emails that went out in A/B split testing, looking directly at the subject line first, and then looking at the preview text, which is something that people forget about all the time, and making sure that it aligned with those 2 target audiences and testing them with each audience to see which performed the best. And what was measured in that campaign was not only an open rate or how many clicks they took from the email into the website, but we were able to also track the offline leads. So somebody that took all of those steps, but then also at the end of that email campaign, we were able to track that they did speak with one of the lenders or they did get a financial advisor through the company. And so it was very full circle in seeing how many leads we could get all the way from the very beginning of the email campaign through all the automation that it included, and then back around to actually becoming a full-time lead for us. And yeah, that was just so much fun to work on because people struggle a lot with the thought of insurance and finances. And it was a way to see, okay, how do we talk to people about this in a way that it's interesting and that it's of value to them?
Okay, I really like that point on how you should go the full circle. So, just to build on that, how do we, scale up that email marketing, and how can we then generate marketing qualified leads from that? Like once the campaign is done.
Yeah, so I think once the campaign is done, it all has to do with the internal team and really making sure that everything is being religiously tracked and that those leads are being nurtured. So you still will have the leads after the campaign ends. So are you just going to let them die, or how do you continue to nurture them into a relationship with the company? And I believe it's really important to continue the nurturing along the way. And I think of that as just like dating. When
Yeah.
you're thinking about an email campaign and getting a brand new customer, especially when we're thinking about it in prospecting. So, how would you speak to somebody if you're just trying to get their number? You have a different tone of voice with them than if you have their number and now you're on a first date with them. Versus if you're now a couple, you're going to have a different relationship. And so I think of email marketing like that a lot, especially when you get to the full circle of customer life cycle. And so thinking about, okay, with the beginning customers, we have to be enough to get their attention for them to want to give us their number. But then with people we're already in a relationship with, we need to continue nurturing that to continue the relationship for future lead conversion as well. And so those emails, when you get to that part of the relationship, they need to have more content, have more valuable content. And that's where it can get tricky for brands, because then you're not only creating this first piece of valuable content at the beginning of the email campaign, but you have to continue thinking of ways to add value to your customers' lives through email over a life cycle, which can be difficult, but it definitely can be done if you're in the right place and on par with who your target audience is.
Okay, so that's nice. And so speaking about customer life cycle, like what would be the different kind of emails that we can use, as part of the life cycle strategy?
Yeah, so I think at the beginning, it's more capturing that lead. So you're looking at emails that have an open contact form or have a direct way that makes it very easy for the customer to contact you. And they have to be a little more flashy than maybe the emails at the other end of the life cycle or even in the middle. In the middle, once you're to a place where you're having a conversation, but they might not be a customer yet, then it's about, let's schedule like a face-to-face meeting or a Zoom meeting, and using that type of email, as well as providing tips within the email that are of value to that customer, because you know them a little better now and you can decide what tips will be useful for them. And then once we are in a relationship with that customer, it's important to have a longer form of content emails, more, not a newsletter. I don't want to say that, but an email with a lot of backlinks, with good SEO that will help the company, and with links to blogs, making sure that there's multiple touch points for that customer to get to the website and finish reading something. One thing that works really well, which is old school, but let's hang on to it, is really having that snapshot of a blog that's very useful, has a lot of information that's of value to that customer, and then having a read more right where they're getting to the good part with the good information, and then they're forced to go to the website in order to get the information that they initially wanted from that blog. And so there's definitely different types. I think one type that I don't like using are the very short, brief ones in lead generation. And I know that, of course, it depends on the company. Some companies have found those to be useful. I think the majority of companies, though, those are not useful because they're not personal. It's very quick and to the point, and have a meeting with me, and you leave the customer in a place of, why would I have a meeting with you? Like, I don't even know who you are.
Exactly.
And then to the other side of that, you don't want to be, we haven't really gotten into cadence yet, but you just don't want to be timing out emails either where somebody's getting, 3 a day from you, because especially in this time of a worldwide pandemic and people being very anxious and trying to protect their businesses, it's not the time to be bombarding their inbox, especially that frequently. And, there's been brands that I love and I'm obsessed with, and I've had to unsubscribe from their email list recently because I think some brands feel this anxiety from COVID. And so they think they really need to up their email game when really they need to step back and strategically think about it a little differently and think about the place that their customer is in right now. And then a good way to enter that's helpful and not a way that's just like, hey, like I've already emailed you 2 times this morning, but here's another one to help you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that point. Like we need to maintain a balance, and otherwise people will just end up unsubscribing, and then the whole effort is,
Yeah,
not used. Yeah.
exactly.
So, Margie, now once you send all our emails at all our customers, based on the life cycle strategy and all, how do I then judge the success of my campaign?
Great question. So I know a lot of small businesses I've worked with, they want to look at just the open rate and see if it was successful that way. I think that can be used in certain instances. I think it's a good metric to keep tabs on. But I think the best metric is to be able to look at that offline part and that offline piece. And that can be hard for businesses to do, especially small or large, because you're having to work across multiple teams and keep track of these leads from the moment they come in via email to where they go within the company during their life cycle. And so that entails really making good relationships with the other teams, really having open communication about what's happening with all of the leads. And then really ensuring that the leads are converting at the end. For example, I've been working on a LinkedIn campaign with a financial client, and it's been lead gen. And I cannot tout LinkedIn lead gen campaigns enough. I think they're very effective. They bring in the right leads. And with this campaign that I've been running, I've been able to see so I connect with somebody in their office that gets phone calls and gets all of the emails, and I send her all of the leads from the LinkedIn campaign on a regular basis. And we're able to have conversations about, okay, this lead was sent to this certain financial advisor. We're going to see if that has followed up. So then we follow up with that financial advisor, see if anything came of that. And then he'll give us an update of, no, like they never called me back and I've called them twice. Or he'll say, yeah, we had a great conversation. We're in the next phase. And so that's where I really think the value comes in of a good email marketing campaign, is really understanding it's not just about what happens on digital, it's what happens after that too, to track. Now, of course, if you are selling something online, like let's say you're Walmart and you're selling items online, then you are looking at who bought what from what email. And that is an important thing to look at just from a digital perspective rather than following that lead offline. So it definitely depends on the business.
Okay, so an insight that I got from this answer is like follow-ups are very important.
Yes. And working with the full team within the company to be able to understand those follow ups.
Okay. And just by so to judge something like the success of a campaign, like if I need to add numbers, like so how would I measure my ROI or KPI of that email?
Yeah. So I would look at who actually took the action first off. I think every email needs to have a type of call to action for the consumer. I would look at who took that call to action and actually did it, and track those numbers as the most important, followed by, of course, open rate and how far somebody got into the email. To track ROI specifically to see, how much are these leads actually costing us? I would look at how much was spent on the campaign, and then also how many people actually click that button. Let's say that's the only CTA, very simple one, to click the button and go to the website, and do some math to figure out, okay, I spent this much, I got this many leads, so it was about $13 to get somebody to click on this button, or it was 50 cents. It can vary a lot. So thinking about that in terms of numbers.
Okay, how do I and then handle the other side of the spectrum is like how do I handle the deliverability of my email?
Yeah. So you have to scrub lists constantly and make sure that the emails are viable. And if they're not, get them out of the list. I've started with clients who have not updated their email lists for 4 years. And the deliverability on that is not very good, as you could imagine. And it took us forever to scrub that list because we didn't know. And so even though it can be, a thorn in the side of some marketers, it's important to do that diligently. I'll look at a list every 2 weeks, if not sooner, and go through and make sure that all of those emails are still working and going to the right people. And also with email deliverability, making sure that you're creating good lists from the very beginning is really important. And making sure that wherever you're sending these emails from, whatever tool you're using, making sure that your domain is linked directly into that tool. So then the emails are less likely to go into the spam folder and you'll be able to get more deliverability that way. Also, don't start an email campaign right after you get a new email address. I know new companies want to just go out there and blow these email campaigns up, but you need to wait until that email address matures a little bit and you've gotten emails in and out, so Google sees you as a good trusted email address as well. So then that's another way to avoid that spam folder.
Okay, that's a nice point. Like not to go all out within the beginning because many people tend to do that.
They do, and then they end up in the spam folder, especially if they're using anything through G Suite, which I love G Suite, but you just have to be super careful with how you're timing that.
Okay, and because you mentioned domain, how would a new user protect or maintain their domain reputation?
Yeah, I think it's really important to first off buy the protection for your domain. I think it's also important, no matter what you do at this time of the internet journey, it's important to have an SSL certificate, making sure that your site is deemed as secure by Google. And with having that, then, seeing that domain on the email address, Google will be able to let that go into the inbox a lot easier than if it's coming from an insecure website domain. I also think it's important to, SEO is just everywhere. And I think it's important to think about the SEO of your website and keeping that domain, having a high domain authority. And so with that, Google will trust the website, they'll trust the domain, and emails will get to inboxes more than they'll go into the spam folder.
Okay, that makes sense. So having a high domain authority would tell Google that we can be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Getting back to A/B testing, could you please give us like some a few examples on how were some of the ways you used A/B testing?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, I usually start with the subject line
Okay.
and I'll test probably three to four per email that goes out with a smaller group of the list that we're sending the email to. And whatever wins from that, I'll end up using. But sometimes what that looks like is starting with the 4, getting 1 out of the way, start going to the 3, getting that one out of the way, and then going to 2 and figuring out which one of the 2 is best. And then sometimes I'll use those 2 and then do a larger A/B test with the whole list of, okay, which one of these worked the best over time? And then I can apply those learnings to my next email that I send out. As I mentioned, preview text, I don't know why people just don't think of it as important, and it really is, because this is what people are seeing, especially if they're on their phone. This is what they're seeing when they open their phone and they're looking at an email and they just see that preview. And so utilizing that space and making sure that it provides value is really important. And so I will test different preview texts across the audience. And usually how I do that test is I'll send those to mobile users only, or I'll look at the mobile data only to see, okay, what's actually performing here for people that are on a phone versus on a desktop, and look, or a tablet now as well. How are they consuming this information? Because that helps me in knowing how we need to tweak the content in the future moving forward. So we'll get more opens and more actions. The other thing I'll test is the actual call to action inside the email. Not only what the call to action is, which is a great test, but also where is it in the email? So right up front, is that working better? Which you think it would, or is it working better to give a short intro and then have the call to action? And I've actually found that a short intro can be much more useful than having just, a button right on top when people come into the email. So those are some of my favorite A/B tests to use that you get a lot of bang for your buck with those.
Okay, that's nice. So one is subject line, and another you would say is like the CTA placement. Apart
Yeah.
apart from that, what do you think about the image to text ratio? Would that make a difference?
Yes, I think that can make a difference, definitely. I've tested that as well, especially with having an image right up front versus an image on the bottom, and then just a little splash of text or a lot of text. And what I found is, first off, it depends if the image has text in it itself, or if it's just an image. And with the images that have text, so more of a graphic, those perform very well if they're right up front. With an image, I found that if it's just an image at the beginning and a little text, it does not perform well. And that could be for multiple reasons. You're not describing why you're adding value. You're not hitting on that for the customer, but also maybe the photo's not loading for them when they're opening that email and it's taking a while. And especially if you're in that phase where you're just prospecting, that you need to think about that, because these people don't know you. They have no reason to continue down and wait for this image to load. It's important to have the text right up front and then have the image later on, or have it, to the side. And I think it's important to have more text than imagery, unless the imagery is a graphic with text in it, like an infographic or something like that.
Okay, that is really nice. So an image, you say with the text in it performs better with just an image in your experience.
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, so then what about links then? Like within the image, if you put a link and maybe general number of links, do you do A/B testing on that as well?
I do, but I do it more in the sense of having a link versus having a button, and which people are most likely to click and go over to. And I've noticed that if it's a button, people are more likely to click it
Yeah.
than if it's a hyperlink. We love clicking buttons.
Yeah. But what about the number? Like sometimes we all received emails which have got many links, and that I think, as you mentioned, G Suite, that would automatically trigger a spam or maybe a promotional.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful. I usually will max mine out at about 2 to 3, and threes if like
Yeah,
I have to do it.
yeah.
Like if I absolutely have to, I will. But to be honest, probably 80% of the email campaigns I worked on have one. And I try to keep it at that number because you don't want to end up in the spam folder, and you don't want to ask somebody to take multiple actions at once either.
So would you say, like, maybe during my customer life cycle, initially I can maybe start with one, and even if I have to go all the way to three, as I become more comfortable with my customer, would that help?
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Uh, like that was a really good insight. Like my final question to you would be, can you share like an email marketing tips, for our audience to increase conversions in 2021?
Sure, yeah. So I don't have to tell you guys, we're living in a really interesting year here. And I think something that all marketers are figuring out, some of them way too late in the game, is that you really have to think about where your customer is, not only with your product, but in their life, if you want them to change a behavior, take an action. And all of us are kind of in this different state of a lot of change and unknown. There's a lot of moving parts right now. And with all of that happening, it's important to not think about email marketing the same way you would have thought about it like in 2019 at this time. People are overwhelmed and they're getting a lot of emails. A lot of people are just starting to learn how to work at home, and that's increasing emails that they're getting. And so, in order to kind of get their attention, you need to be adding value somehow. And it seems like common sense, but you just have to be adding value, and you have to tell the customer what value you're giving them in the subject line. And as hard as that sounds, it has to happen. So if you can take, maybe you're a consultant and you're doing an email marketing campaign, take it from the side of, hey, like I can give you 2 hours back a week, open to find out how, or something like that. If you're an e-commerce brand, hey, let me do your shopping for you while you're working. You don't have to take care of this anymore. You have to be creative in thinking about ways that you're giving someone back time. That's really important right now. Or giving them back money. And so you have the brands that are lucky and can do like a 50% off inside. It's important to think about that value up front in the subject line, but also reiterate it in that preview text of what value you're adding. I think it's also important that you are personal with the email list. And I can't tell you how many times I get an email that says, "Hi, Marji J," or "Hi, Sherman." And I just know that that's somebody that has not automated their campaign correctly. And so on the personalization side, when you're automating, which seems like complete polar opposites, you need to be really checking everything you're doing with a fine tooth comb and making sure everything's in place correctly. Because, and this is just any time, any year, you want to make sure that you're doing this, because even the best marketers out there will end up accidentally sending that email where it's like, "Hi, first name." And you're like, "Oh my goodness, this person doesn't even know who I am. Why are they contacting me?" So getting that name right adds so much value. And it's easy to think, "Oh, well, then I'm just not going to use the name." But having the name in there is what adds the personalization. And so you really do need to do that. And then wherever else you can, depending on the tool you're using, figure out unique ways to use that personalization in a way that it will work, not in a way where it will sound funny. So you're able to have that connection. And I've advised some of my clients as well that with this year being so the way it is, those clients that you, or potential clients, if you're prospecting, that you know are the most likely to convert, I'm talking about like a very small percentage that you just have narrowed in on,
Yeah.
send them a direct email that is signed by you. It's not automated, just to the very tippy top of the list, because people are just feeling so much anxiety right now. And I cannot tell you how valuable those emails can be, along with an automation campaign helping you as well along the way. And in those emails, when you're doing it personally, I do recommend doing some research and making the first paragraph about that person and why you admire them, why you want to work with them. Just really make it about them, and you'll have their attention.
Okay, that is really nice. Like, so being honest with with that with your customer, I think, and personalization, that is something which you would be able to scale up for companies that are just starting out. So, as a final question to you, Marji, since you're mentioning about the tools and all, since our customers, the ones who are just starting out, is there any tool that comes in your mind, particularly to like help with email marketing?
So I'm most familiar with the HubSpot automation,
Okay.
but also I think I've done the Salesforce integration as well. And but if you're just starting out, I do think it's more of like where you can get a free account or a low cost account and experiment with your emails. So something like a MailChimp would work perfectly for you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your insights, Marji,
Of
and
course.
like they were really valuable, and I know our audience is really going to enjoy this interview.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It was great having a conversation with you.
Yes. So, folks, we'll be back with a new episode and a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned. We'll see you around for the next one.